Part 2. Signals in the dark 3 hours. After Storm's call echoed across the burning sky, something impossible happened. Deep in space, far beyond the Korgan fleet, a series of bright flashes appeared like stars being born and dying in moments. The flashes grew brighter and more frequent until they formed a pattern that stretched across the darkness. On Earth, in the underground command center of the Global Defense Initiative, Admiral Kate Morrison stared at the readings on her screen with growing excitement. The quantum communications array had picked up an ancient distress signal from the Ethros system, a frequency that had not been used for over 2,000 years. The signal was weak and broken, but the computer was slowly piecing together its meaning. It was a dragon call transmitted through space itself, using methods that human science barely understood. The message was simple but desperate: help us, we are dying. Kate had spent her entire career studying alien civilizations, and she knew the legends of the dragon-bonded elves of Ethros. Most people thought they were just stories, but Kate had found evidence that they were real. Ancient texts spoke of elves who could communicate with dragons across vast distances and who possessed magic that could reshape reality itself. She turned to her aide, Commander Lisa Brooks, and gave the order that would change everything. Prepare the Aurora fleet for immediate departure. Full combat loadout with experimental weapons. We are going to Ethros. Lisa looked confused. Ma'am, that system is under Korgan control. Our intelligence reports say the planet fell 3 days ago. There may be nothing left to save. Kate smiled grimly. The signal we just received is less than 4 hours old, Lisa. Someone is still alive down there and they are calling for help. Earth has never ignored a distress call, and we are not going to start now. The Aurora fleet consisted of 12 ships built using technology reverse-engineered from crashed alien vessels. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who had undergone genetic enhancement to improve their strength, speed, and reflexes. The crews called themselves super soldiers, and they had trained for years to fight enemies that normal humans could never hope to defeat. Captain Amy Walker stood in the briefing room of the flagship Aurora Prime, addressing her team leaders. The holographic display showed the Ethros system with red dots marking Korgan ship positions. There were over 3,000 enemy vessels surrounding the planet like a metal cloud. The mission is simple, Amy said in her calm, steady voice. We break through the Korgan blockade, extract any survivors, and get out before they can overwhelm us. Intelligence suggests the planet's population was around 50 million. Current estimates put survivors at less than 10,000. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Betty Clark, raised her hand. Captain, what about the dragon signal? How do we know it is not a Korgan trap? Amy had wondered about that herself, but her instincts told her the signal was genuine. The quantum signature matched. Ancient elven technology and the emotional resonance in the transmission felt real. Someone down there was genuinely desperate and calling for help. We take that risk, Amy replied. If it is a trap, we deal with it. If it is real, then we just might save an entire civilization. Either way, we do our job. The Aurora fleet launched from Earth's hidden military base on the far side of the moon. The ships used experimental fold space drives that could cross vast distances in minutes rather than years. The technology was dangerous and unreliable, but it was the only way to reach Ethros before the last survivors were killed. As the fleet entered fold space, Amy felt the familiar sensation of reality bending around her. The enhanced soldiers were the only humans who could survive fold space travel without losing their minds. Something about their genetic modifications allowed them to perceive the twisted dimensions without going insane. Meanwhile, on Ethros, Melody was leading a desperate retreat through the ruined capital city. She had managed to save 30 elven children and a handful of adults, but Korgan forces were closing in from all directions. The war magic flowing through her veins gave her incredible power, but it was also slowly poisoning her mind. Storm carried the wounded while Spark flew ahead, scouting for safe routes through the rubble. The dragons were exhausted from hours of fighting, but they refused to abandon their elven friends. Every few minutes they had to stop and fight off another patrol of Korgan soldiers. Elder Cassandra stumbled along beside Melody, her robes torn and stained with blood. She had seen the dark magic at work, and she was terrified of what it was doing to the young woman. The forbidden spells always demanded a price, and that price was usually the caster's soul. "Melody, you must stop using the war magic," Cassandra pleaded. "I can see it changing you. Your eyes are turning black and your voice sounds different. Please remember who you are." But Melody barely heard her. The magic whispered constantly in her mind, promising greater power if she would just let it in completely. It showed her visions of the Korgan Empire burning, of their worlds turned to ash and their people scattered to the void. All she had to do was embrace the darkness fully. A group of Korgan heavy assault mechs blocked their path, forcing Melody to make another terrible choice. She could use conventional magic and probably fail to stop them, or she could use more war magic and risk losing herself entirely. The children were counting on her and she could not let them down. Dark energy erupted from her hands, striking the mechs with force that tore them apart at the molecular level. The destruction was so complete that not even scrap metal remained. But as the magic flowed through her, Melody felt another piece of her humanity slip away. Storm sensed what was happening through their bond and let out a mournful cry that cut through the battle noise. Dragons had long memories, and he remembered the stories of elves who had fallen to the war magic during the Dark Wars. They had become creatures of pure destruction that had to be stopped by their own people. Suddenly, Spark's excited chirping filled the air. The little dragon was pointing at the sky where new lights were appearing. These were not Korgan ships, though. These moved differently, with purpose and grace rather than mechanical precision. 12 human ships dropped out of fold, spaced directly above the planet. They were smaller than the Korgan vessels, but they radiated power like miniature suns. Energy weapons that had never been seen before began carving through the Korgan fleet with devastating efficiency. Amy Walker stood on the bridge of Aurora Prime, watching the battle unfold on her screens. The Korgan commanders were clearly surprised by the sudden attack, and their formations were breaking apart in confusion. It was exactly the opening her people needed. "All ships begin planetary assault," Amy ordered. "Priority targets are Korgan ground forces and any facilities holding prisoners. Remember, we are here to rescue survivors, not to conquer territory." The Aurora fleet dove toward the planet's surface, leaving trails of blue fire across the sky. For the first time in days, the people of Ethros had reason to hope. Help had come from the stars, and the tide of battle was about to change. Part 1. The Last Stand. The morning sky above Ethros turned black as thousands of Korgan warships blotted out the sun. Melody pressed her face against the cold crystal window of the observation tower and watched her world begin to die. The alien ships moved like giant metal insects across the heavens, dropping bombs that turned entire cities into smoking craters. Her dragon spark coiled around her shoulders, sensing her fear through their mental bond. The small fire dragon was only 3 years old, but already showed incredible power. His scales glowed like burning coals, and his eyes held ancient wisdom that seemed impossible for such a young creature. Storm lay curled up near the tower entrance, much larger than Spark, with midnight blue scales that sparkled like stars. At 7 years old, he was the size of a small house and could generate lightning powerful enough to split mountains. Both dragons had been with Melody since they hatched, and they were more than pets. They were family. The Elven Council had gathered in the chamber below, arguing loudly about what to do next. Melody could hear their voices rising and falling like waves, but she already knew what they would decide. The elves were peaceful people who had spent thousands of years studying magic and art and philosophy. They had no armies, no weapons, no way to fight back against an invasion like this. Elder Cassandra climbed the spiral stairs to find Melody at the window. The old elf woman looked tired and scared, her long silver hair hanging loose around her shoulders. She placed a gentle hand on Melody's arm and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "The council has decided to surrender," Cassandra said. "We will offer the Korgans our knowledge and our crystals in exchange for the lives of our people. Perhaps they will show mercy if we do not resist." Melody turned away from the window, anger burning in her chest like dragon fire. The Korgans had already destroyed 12 worlds in this sector of the galaxy. They took everything valuable and left the survivors to die slowly on ruined planets. Surrender would only delay the inevitable. "They will kill us anyway," Melody replied. "The Korgans do not understand mercy. They see other races as obstacles to be removed or resources to be harvested. We mean nothing to them. Cassandra sighed and looked out at the burning cities below. Then what would you have us do, child? We are scholars and artists, not warriors. Our magic is powerful, but it was never meant for war. Melody had been thinking about this question for days as the Korgan fleet approached their world. The elves had sent distress signals to every known civilization in the galaxy, but no one had answered. The great powers were too busy fighting their own wars or too afraid of the Korgan Empire to risk helping a small peaceful world like Ethros. We have to try something, Melody said. Even if we die fighting, it is better than dying on our knees. My dragons are strong, and I know the old war magic that our ancestors used long ago. Maybe we can hurt them enough to make them think twice. Cassandra shook her head sadly. The war magic has been forbidden for good reason, Melody. It corrupts the soul and turns people into monsters. That is why our ancestors abandoned it after the Dark Wars ended. Before Melody could respond, a terrible sound filled the air. The Korgan ships were beginning their bombardment in earnest, and the protective shields around the capital city were starting to fail. Bright flashes of energy lit up the sky as the alien weapons struck the crystal barriers again and again. Spark hissed and spread his wings, flames dancing around his small form. Storm raised his massive head and growled low in his throat, electricity crackling between his teeth. Both dragons could feel the violence and death spreading across their world, and their instincts told them to fight back. The tower shook as a Korgan bomb struck nearby. Through the window, Melody could see Korgan dropships landing in the outer districts. Metal soldiers poured out of the ships, moving with mechanical precision as they began killing every elf they could find. Cassandra gasped and grabbed Melody's arm. "Look at that," she whispered, pointing at something in the distance. A group of elven children was running through the streets trying to escape the Korgan soldiers. They were too young to understand what was happening, but old enough to know they needed to hide. One little girl with golden hair tripped and fell just as a Korgan war machine rounded the corner. Without thinking, Melody leaped onto Storm's back. The great dragon spread his wings and launched himself from the tower window, diving toward the street below. Spark followed close behind his smaller form, darting through the air like a living flame. They reached the children just as the Korgan machine raised its weapon. Storm roared and breathed lightning that struck the robot square in the chest. The machine exploded in a shower of sparks and metal fragments. More Korgan soldiers appeared from the surrounding buildings, their red eyes glowing as they locked onto the dragons. Melody felt the old war magic stirring in her blood, responding to her anger and desperation. She had studied the forbidden spells in secret despite the council's warnings. Dark energy swirled around her hands as she spoke words of power that had not been heard on Ethros for 1,000 years. The magic felt cold and hungry, like a living thing that wanted to devour everything around it. But it was also incredibly strong, stronger than anything she had ever felt before. The Korgan soldiers opened fire, but their energy beams struck an invisible barrier around Melody and the children. She could feel the magic protecting them, but she could also feel it trying to sink deeper into her mind. The power wanted to be used, wanted to kill and destroy until nothing remained. Storm and Spark attacked the soldiers from both sides, breathing fire and lightning, while Melody gathered the children behind her shield. But more enemies were coming, and she knew they could not hold this position for long. Soon they would be overwhelmed, and then the children would die along with everyone else on this doomed world. As if reading her thoughts, Storm turned his great head toward the sky and roared a call that echoed across the burning city. It was an ancient dragon cry for help that had not been heard for centuries. Melody did not know if anyone would answer, but it was their only hope now. Part 3, First Contact. The human ships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars, leaving brilliant streaks of light across the smoke-filled sky. Amy Walker gripped the command chair of Aurora Prime as the ship shook from Korgan anti-aircraft fire. Her enhanced reflexes allowed her to process the battlefield data faster than any normal human could manage. "Launch all fighter squadrons," Amy ordered. "I want a clear path to the surface. Priority rescue zones are marked in blue on your tactical displays." The ship's AI had analyzed the quantum dragon signal and traced its origin to a specific area of the capital city. Long-range sensors showed a small group of life forms moving, through the ruins pursued by Korgan forces. The energy signatures suggested at least two large creatures that could only be dragons. On the surface, Melody watched in amazement as human fighters swooped down to attack the Korgan mechs that had been hunting her group. The human weapons fired beams of pure energy that cut through alien armor like hot knives through ice. Explosions lit up the ruined streets as Korgan machines fell one after another. Storm spread his wings and roared his approval while Spark danced, in the air breathing small jets of flame. The dragons could sense that these newcomers were different from the Korgans. There was no malice in their approach, only determination to help those in need. One of the human ships landed in a nearby plaza, and its cargo door opened with a soft hiss. The first figure to emerge was unlike anything Melody had ever seen. It was clearly female, but taller and broader than any elf, with short brown hair and strange armor that seemed to glow with inner light. Amy Walker stepped onto the surface of Ethros and immediately activated her suit's environmental scanners. The air was breathable but filled with smoke and toxic particles from the burning city. Her enhanced vision allowed her to see clearly through the haze as she spotted the group of elven survivors. The first thing that struck her was how beautiful the elves were despite their desperate situation. They moved with natural grace even when running for their lives, and their faces held an otherworldly quality that spoke of ancient wisdom. But it was the dragons that truly took her breath away. Storm was magnificent, a creature of legend brought to life with scales that seemed to hold captured starlight. Spark was smaller but no less impressive, his fiery coloring making him look like a living jewel. Amy had studied xenobiology for years, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of seeing actual dragons. The second thing she noticed was the dark energy swirling around one particular elf. The young woman with silver hair was clearly using some kind of magic, but there was something wrong about it. Amy's enhanced senses could detect the corruption in the energy signature, and she realized this person was in serious danger. Melody approached the humans cautiously, with Storm and Spark flanking her protectively. She could see that these newcomers were not elves, but they were clearly intelligent and they had come to help. The translation device on the lead human's armor was already adapting to the elven language. "Are you the ones who sent the distress signal?" Amy asked, her voice carrying clearly despite the battle noise around them. Melody nodded and gestured to Storm. "My dragon called across the stars, but I did not think anyone would hear us. Who are you and why did you come?" "We are from Earth," Amy replied. "We received your dragon's call and we came to help. My name is Captain Amy Walker and these are my soldiers. We are here to evacuate any survivors and take you somewhere safe." The concept of Earth was familiar to Melody from ancient elven texts, but she had never imagined that humans had developed such advanced technology. These soldiers moved with inhuman speed, and their weapons were clearly superior to anything the Korgans possessed. Elder Cassandra stepped forward, leaning heavily on her walking stick. She studied Amy with eyes that had seen many centuries pass and seemed to approve of what she found there. "We are grateful for your help," Cassandra said formally. "I am Elder Cassandra of the High Council, and this is Melody, our young dragon keeper. But I fear we may be beyond saving now. The Korgans have taken our world and most of our people are dead." Amy's expression hardened behind her helmet's visor. She had seen the reports of Korgan atrocities on other worlds, and she knew what these people had endured. But she also knew that Earth had resources the Korgans had never encountered before. "Ma'am, with respect, you are not beyond saving until you are dead," Amy said firmly. "We have 12 ships and enough firepower to level this entire planet if necessary. What we need from you is information about Korgan positions and any other survivors we can reach." Before anyone could respond, Spark suddenly hissed and pointed his small head toward the sky. More Korgan ships were approaching fast, and they looked different from the standard vessels. These were sleek and predatory, with weapon systems that glowed with ominous red light. "Those are Korgan hunter-killers," Amy's tactical officer, Lieutenant Betty Clark, warned over the comm system. "They are specifically designed to hunt down survivors and resistance fighters. They must have detected our landing." Amy immediately began issuing orders to her team while helping the elves move toward the transport ship. But Melody hesitated as the war magic in her system reacted to the approaching threat. The dark power wanted her to stay and fight to unleash its full fury on the Korgan hunters. Storm sensed her internal struggle and pressed his great head against her shoulder. Through their bond, he showed her images of the children they had saved and reminded her that her duty was to protect, not destroy. The dragon's love and loyalty helped her resist the magic's whispers for the moment. "We need to move," now Amy said as the hunter-killers began their attack run. "Can your dragons carry passengers?" Melody nodded and began organizing the evacuation. Storm could carry several children on his broad back, while Spark could take supplies and weapons. The elder elves would have to go in the human transport ship, along with the wounded. As they lifted off, Amy watched Melody ride Storm into the sky and marveled at the sight. The bond between elf and dragon was clearly deeper than anything in human experience. It was more than training or partnership. It was a meeting of souls that created something greater than either could achieve alone. The hunter-killers opened fire with plasma cannons designed to vaporize anything they hit. Amy's ship twisted through the air using maneuvers that would have killed a normal human crew. The enhanced soldiers handled the stress easily while returning fire with weapons that turned Korgan ships into expanding clouds of superheated gas. Storm proved to be incredibly agile for such a large creature weaving between energy beams while Spark darted around the enemy ships like an angry wasp. The dragon's natural armor could deflect most weapons, but Amy knew they would not survive a direct hit from the heavy plasma cannons. One of the hunter-killers broke away from the main group and dove toward Storm, clearly intending to ram the dragon out of the sky. Amy did not hesitate. She activated her suit's emergency thrusters and launched herself from her ship's cargo bay. The enhanced soldier struck the Korgan ship like a guided missile, her armor's kinetic dampeners absorbing the massive impact. She used her suit's cutting laser to burn through the hull, and then fought her way to the bridge where she systematically destroyed the ship's control systems. As the hunter-killer spiraled toward the ground, Amy activated her emergency beacon and was picked up by another Aurora ship. The remaining Korgan vessels retreated when they realized they were outmatched by the human technology and tactics. For the first time since the invasion began, the skies over Ethros belonged to the defenders, but Amy knew this was only the beginning. The real battle would come when the main Korgan fleet realized they faced an enemy they had never encountered before. Part 4. The War Magic's Price. The rescue convoy reached the Aurora fleet's temporary base in the mountains just as the second wave of Korgan attacks began. Amy had chosen the location carefully, using natural caves enhanced with human technology to create a defensible position. Force fields protected the entrances while sensor arrays watched for incoming threats. Melody dismounted from Storm's back and immediately collapsed to her knees as waves of pain shot through her body. The war magic was demanding payment for its use, and each spell she cast brought her closer to losing her humanity completely. Black veins were starting to appear on her arms, and her eyes now glowed with unnatural light. Dr. Rachel Taylor, the fleet's chief medical officer, rushed to help her, but stopped when her instruments detected the strange energy readings. Rachel had never seen anything like it, but her enhanced intellect allowed her to quickly analyze the magical corruption spreading through Melody's system. "This is not a disease," Rachel said grimly. "It is some kind of energy parasitism. The magic is literally consuming her life force and replacing it with something else. Without treatment, she will be completely transformed within days." Elder Cassandra knelt beside Melody and placed her hands on the young woman's fevered forehead. The old elf's face was filled with sorrow and regret as she felt the war magic burning through Melody's spirit like acid. "I should have stopped her sooner," Cassandra whispered. "The war magic always exacts this price. Those who use it become vessels for pure destruction until nothing of their original self remains. It is why our people abandoned these spells long ago." Amy listened to this explanation while studying tactical reports from her scout teams. The Korgan Empire had committed over half their fleet to taking Ethros, which meant this world held special significance for them. Intelligence suggested they were after something specific, possibly related to the dragons themselves. "Can the process be reversed?" Amy asked. "Is there any way to purge this magic from her system?" Cassandra shook her head sadly. "The ancient texts speak of only one cure, but it requires a willing sacrifice. Someone must take the war magic into themselves to save the infected person. But this only transfers the corruption, it does not destroy it. Storm had been listening to the conversation through his bond with Melody, and he made a decision that surprised everyone. The great dragon approached Dr. Taylor and began to glow with the same blue light that surrounded his lightning breath. He was offering to take the magic into himself. Spark immediately objected with a series of angry chirps and flame jets. The small dragon knew that accepting the war magic would destroy Storm's mind, just as surely as it was destroying Melody's. Dragons were even more vulnerable to magical corruption than elves because their spirits burned so much brighter. Before anyone could stop him. Storm pressed his snout against Melody's hand and began the transfer process. Dark energy flowed from the elf into the dragon while everyone watched in horror. Storm's beautiful starlight scales began to turn black and his eyes filled with malevolent fire. The transfer was interrupted when Amy stepped forward and grabbed Storm's head with her bare hands. Her enhanced nervous system allowed her to interface directly with the dragon's mind, and she used her superior willpower to stop the magical flow before it could complete. "There has to be another way," Amy said firmly. "We do not sacrifice our friends to save our friends. That is not who we are." Dr. Taylor had been analyzing the war magic with her portable laboratory, and she suddenly looked up with excitement. "The magical energy has a quantum signature that resembles certain types of exotic matter we have encountered before. Our fold space drives use similar principles to manipulate reality." Amy understood immediately. If the war magic was just another form of exotic energy, then human technology might be able to contain or neutralize it. The Aurora fleet carried experimental equipment designed to handle the most dangerous forces in the universe. "Get me a quantum containment unit," Amy ordered. "Full isolation protocols and emergency purge systems. If we can trap this magic, we might be able to extract it safely." The medical team worked quickly to set up the containment field around Melody while she drifted in and out of consciousness. The war magic was fighting back, sensing that its host was about to be taken away. Dark tendrils of energy lashed out, trying to infect anyone who came too close. Storm and Spark took positions on either side of the containment field, adding their own natural magical defenses to the human technology. The dragons had an instinctive understanding of magical forces that complemented the scientific approach perfectly. As the extraction process began, Melody's eyes suddenly snapped open and she spoke in a voice that was not entirely her own. The war magic had gained enough control to communicate directly, and it was not pleased with the interference. "You cannot stop what has already begun," the corrupted voice said. "The power flows through her now, and it will not be denied. She belongs to the darkness, and through her we will spread to consume this entire world." Amy looked directly into Melody's glowing eyes and spoke with calm authority. "You are mistaken. She belongs to her dragons and her people and herself. You are just a parasite that thinks it is important." The war magic responded by trying to break free of the containment field. Energy crackled around the barriers as the ancient spells fought against human science. For a moment it seemed like the magic might win, but then Storm did something unexpected. The great dragon began to sing a deep thrumming melody that resonated through the mountain itself. Spark joined in with his higher voice, and together they wove a song of binding that was older than the war magic itself. This was dragon magic in its purest form, the power of creation rather than destruction. The song wrapped around the war magic, like chains of light holding it in place long enough for the extraction to complete. Dark energy poured out of Melody's body and into the containment unit where it writhed like a living thing before finally going still. Melody's eyes returned to their normal silver color, and she took her first clean breath in days. The black veins faded from her skin and the unnatural glow disappeared completely. She was weak and exhausted, but she was herself again. Dr. Taylor sealed the containment unit and marked it for disposal in the nearest star. Some things were too dangerous to study or preserve, and the war magic was definitely one of them. Humanity had learned long ago that some knowledge was better left forgotten. As Melody recovered her strength, she reached out through her bond to thank Storm and Spark for their help. The dragons responded with feelings of love and relief so pure that tears came to her eyes. They had risked everything to save her, and she would never forget that sacrifice. Amy checked the tactical displays and saw that Korgan reinforcements were massing in orbit. The brief respite was over, and the real battle was about to begin. But now they had something the Korgans did not expect: an alliance between human technology and dragon magic that was stronger than either could achieve alone. The war for Ethros was far from over, but for the first time, Amy felt confident that they could win. Earth's super soldiers had proven they could fight impossible odds, and the dragons had shown that courage was not limited to any single species. Elder Cassandra approached Amy and bowed formally in the ancient elven manner. "You have saved our most precious daughter," she said. "The debt we owe can never be repaid, but we will stand with you until the end." Amy smiled and returned the bow with equal respect. "We stand together, Elder. That is what makes us strong." Part 5. Dragons and Stars United. The final battle for Ethros began at dawn when the Korgan Empire committed their entire invasion fleet to destroying the human forces. Over 4,000 alien warships descended from orbit, while ground forces, numbering in the millions, advanced across the planet's surface. The Korgan High Command had decided that these mysterious humans posed too great a threat to be allowed to survive. Amy stood in the command center watching the tactical displays with calm determination. The Aurora fleet was vastly outnumbered, but she had learned never to underestimate what humans could accomplish when fighting for something they believed in. More importantly, they now had allies whose power complemented their own technology perfectly. Melody entered the command center riding on Storm's back, with Spark perched on her shoulder. The young elf looked fully recovered from her ordeal with the war magic, and her bond with the dragons seemed stronger than ever before. She had spent the night learning about human military tactics while teaching the soldiers about dragon capabilities. "The Korgan main force will reach our position in 3 hours, Amy announced to her assembled officers. "Intelligence suggests they have weapons capable of cracking this planet in half if they choose to use them. Our mission is to prevent that outcome while evacuating as many civilians as possible." Commander Lisa Brooks raised her hand with a question that everyone was thinking. "Captain, what about reinforcements from Earth? The nearest fleet is weeks away, even using fold space drives." Amy had already considered this problem and reached a difficult conclusion. Earth could not save them in time, which meant they had to save themselves. But sometimes the best solutions came from unexpected places, and she had an idea that might work. "We are not waiting for reinforcements," Amy said firmly. "We are going to end this war today by striking at the heart of the Korgan Empire itself. Dr. Taylor has been analyzing their command ship, and she believes we can use dragon magic to enhance our fold space technology." The plan was audacious, almost insane, but it might be their only chance. The Korgan command ship was a massive fortress containing the Empire's military leadership and their most advanced weapons. If they could destroy it, the entire invasion force would collapse into chaos. Dr. Taylor explained her findings to the group using holographic displays to show the quantum interactions between dragon magic and human technology. The dragon's natural ability to manipulate space and time could amplify the fold drive's power by several orders of magnitude. "In theory, we could open a fold space corridor directly inside their command ship," Rachel said excitedly. "The energy release would be equivalent to a star-going supernova but contained within their hull. Nothing could survive that level of destruction." The biggest problem was that someone would have to guide the fold corridor from inside enemy territory. The targeting had to be perfect, or the explosion might destroy Ethros along with the Korgan fleet. It was a suicide mission that required both technological expertise and magical ability. Storm rumbled deep in his throat and exchanged glances with Spark. Through their bond with Melody, the dragons had already reached the same conclusion that Amy was approaching. They would have to do this together, or not at all. "I will guide the targeting," Melody announced. "Storm can carry me close enough to their command ship, and I can use our bond to provide precise coordinates for the fold corridor. Spark can create a diversion to keep their fighters busy." Amy shook her head immediately. "Absolutely not. You just recovered from magical corruption, and this mission has almost no chance of survival. We will find another way." But Melody had made up her mind, and the dragons supported her decision. She looked Amy in the eyes and spoke with quiet conviction that reminded the human captain of her own determination. to never abandon those in need. "Captain, you came across the galaxy to save people you had never met," Melody said. "You risked everything because it was the right thing to do. Now I am asking you to let me do the same thing. My world, my people, my dragons. This is my choice to make." Elder Cassandra stepped forward and placed her hand on Amy's shoulder. The old elf had been listening to the discussion with growing pride in her young protege's courage and wisdom. "She is right," Cassandra said sadly. "This is what it means to be a dragon keeper. They do not just share power with their bonded creatures, they share destiny as well. Storm and Spark have already accepted this path, and Melody must be allowed to walk it." Amy felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. Every instinct told her to find a safer solution, but the tactical situation was clear. They were out of time and options, and sometimes leadership meant accepting sacrifices that broke your heart. The Aurora fleet launched its desperate gambit just as the Korgan main force reached planetary bombardment range. Amy's ships engaged the enemy fleet in a running battle that drew attention away from Melody's infiltration mission. Human fighters danced between alien capital ships, trading firepower with opponents that outmassed them 100-1. Storm flew through the chaos of battle with Melody clinging to his back, while Spark darted around them like a guardian star. The dragons used every trick they knew to avoid the devastating weapons fire that filled space around them. Lightning and flame cleared paths through enemy fighter squadrons, while Melody calculated the precise coordinates they would need. The Korgan command ship was a monster of metal and energy, larger than most asteroids and bristling with enough firepower to sterilize worlds. Its shields could withstand anything the Aurora fleet could throw at it, and its weapons were already charging for a planet-killing bombardment. Storm landed on the command ship's hull and used his claws to tear through the outer armor plating. Melody placed her hands on the metal and reached out with her enhanced senses to map the internal structure. Through her bond with the dragons, she could feel the ship's weak points and critical systems. The fold space corridor would have to open in the primary reactor chamber to ensure complete destruction. But that section was heavily shielded and protected by automated defenses that would activate the moment they detected an intrusion. Spark volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission, flying directly into the ship's weapon systems to disable their targeting computers. The little dragon's speed and agility allowed him to dance between energy beams that would have vaporized anything larger. While Spark created chaos inside the ship, Storm and Melody worked to establish the fold corridor targeting matrix. The process required perfect synchronization between dragon magic and human technology, with no room for error or hesitation. Amy watched from the Aurora Prime's bridge as her quantum engineers opened the fold space portal on Melody's coordinates. Energy readings spiked beyond anything they had ever recorded as the fabric of space itself began to tear open inside the Korgan command ship. The explosion was visible from orbit as the enemy flagship simply ceased to exist in a flash of light that briefly outshone Ethros' sun. The shockwave destroyed dozens of nearby ships and sent the rest of the Korgan fleet fleeing in terror. They had never seen anything like it, and their morale collapsed completely. In the aftermath, Amy searched frantically for any sign of Storm, Spark, or Melody. The dragons should have been able to escape using their natural ability to slip between dimensions, but the energy release had been so massive that normal rules might not apply. Then Storm's familiar roar echoed across the battlefield as the great dragon emerged from a shimmering portal with Melody and Spark safely on his back. They had used the fold corridor itself as an escape route, riding the quantum currents to safety at the last possible moment. The Korgan Empire's invasion of Ethros was over, but more importantly, their reputation for invincibility was shattered. Word would spread throughout the galaxy that Earth's super soldiers had defeated them, and that dragon magic was real and powerful. The balance of power had shifted, and oppressed worlds everywhere would take hope from this victory. Amy stood with Melody on Storm's back, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The war was over, but the friendship between their peoples was just beginning. Together they would face whatever challenges the universe threw at them, because they had learned that unity was stronger than any weapon. The galaxy would never be the Same because Earth and Ethros had proven that courage, compassion, and determination could overcome any force of darkness. Dragons and stars had united, and their light would shine forever.